Um,
Thank you.
and without further ado, I'm just going to introduce Lisa Ryan, who really doesn't need any introduction. She's our friend and colleague, and she's a force of nature, and she's going to speak with us tonight about this brilliant new campaign, Pigs Without Borders. So over to you. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Rebecca, for your wonderful presentation, which in a lot of respects sort of links into part of what we're trying to do. Just a quick update that my extraordinary colleague, Alex Vince, who was going to be co-presenting with me tonight, has had NBN problems all day. So poor Alex has no internet whatsoever. So you're going to hear, I'm going to cover the whole presentation. And there's nothing I like doing more than talking about our piggy friends. Cara is going to share the slides for me so I can concentrate on what I'm saying. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Cara. So just a trigger warning, there are a couple of images in our presentation that may be distressing to some viewers. I'm sorry about that, but that's the reality of how pigs are treated in Australia and why we're doing this campaign. Next, please. So tonight I'm going to cover, and we do have a lot of slides, and like Rebecca's very generous offer, anybody attending tonight or anybody who watches the recorded presentation who would like to access our slides, we're very, very happy for people to use them for their own advocacy. So I'm going to cover a little bit about the history of the Australian pork industry, which is why this campaign has been launched. I'm also going to touch on something that a lot of people, probably a lot of younger people, aren't aware of, and that's animal liberation's 5 decades. Next year, we're 50 years old, 5 decades of advocating for pigs, and in many respects being doing the very early groundbreaking work, and I think that's important. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the campaign and what we've done and what we're aiming to do. Next, please, Cara. So animal liberation has been a big focus of animal liberation, particularly in the very early years, was farmed animals, and that's never stopped. And a big focus of our farmed animals work has always been about Australian pigs, and all the early exposures were through the work of animal liberation, including people like Linda Stoner. Next, please. So some of the work we've done in the past, which we're going to continue to talk about, is the groundbreaking, going into intensive piggeries, going into pig slaughterhouses, the very first exposés about how pigs were treated in Australia were through Animal Liberation's work. And at every opportunity, we have challenged the government and governments and the industry, calling them out with other advocates at the time, but we certainly led the charge. And it was through our work that I think the plight of Australian pigs was put onto the political and the public agenda, because the things that were exposed by our team early on had never been seen before. Some were world firsts. Next, please. So these are 3 really old images from the 80s, and the one on the left is showing members of the Animal Liberation team who entered a piggery, chained themselves to the sow stalls to show the treatment of sows. I think this might have been Paul Keating's piggery. The middle image, you can see Linda Stoner in years gone by and Peter Singer on the left on the steps of a courthouse after having been charged for being in a piggery and yet still protesting. And the photo on the right is one of the very early piggery exposures. So some of these images was the first time the Australian public got to see how pigs were being treated in piggeries around Australia. Next, please. So a little bit now about the Australian pork industry. Next, please. So for the last 6 decades, so 60 years, what has occurred in Australia has basically been a replication or a copycat of intensive animal agriculture for pigs that had started a couple of decades earlier in both the US and Europe, where it started in sort of the 1950s and then escalated all over the country. And then that was picked up in Australia. Now, early on, when animal liberation started taking up the gauntlet for Australian pigs, there were multiple exposures, and it wasn't always us. We collaborated with Animal Liberation Victoria and Voiceless, who were doing an enormous amount of critically important work for Australian pigs at the time. Next, please. So, in terms of the Australian pork industry and the power, the lobbying power and the financial power they have, there has been, because of all of the exposures, multiple government inquiries into the animal welfare protection laws focusing on pigs. There has been the recent POCTA regulation review in New South Wales, and at the moment there is, for the first time in a decade, a review of Australia's national animal welfare strategy laws after that had been ditched by the former Liberal National Party government. So we're trying to get pigs very much back on the agenda through that process. And there was a very important Victorian government inquiry specifically into pig welfare, and Animal Liberation participated through a formal submission. And at the time, we were invited, and I spoke to that committee during a public hearing about our experience and our advocacy for pigs. Now, sadly, while it was a really good inquiry and the committee put out a very good report, still nothing has changed for pigs in Victoria, and certainly nothing much has changed for pigs across Australia. Next, please. So the government's response to exposure after exposure is that they continue to prioritise pigs as commodities and the economics of the pork industry over animal welfare and overwhelming public expectations that continue to show in independent polling that people are really concerned about the way pigs are treated and how all farmed animals are treated. The industry continues to escape really intensive public scrutiny because of their financial strength and their lobbying power. So while organisations like Australian Pork Limited can get meetings with the relevant ministers for agriculture, when we try and approach these ministers for a meeting, we're ignored. And that continues. That doesn't mean we'll give up, but that's how it's going at the moment. And the government, rather than dealing with these evidenced issues of really horrible treatment of pigs, their response is to increase the amount of ag-gag laws to actually try and silence the activists that are capturing and documenting the cruelty and then publishing the cruelty. So rather than deal with the issues, they're trying to silence those of us who are trying to speak out. Next, please. So at the moment, the current state, and these are only the high level issues. So the 2024 data has confirmed that 5.8 million Australian pigs were slaughtered, okay, in the last year. We know the brutality of intensive confinement, and that is sow stalls, farrowing crates, and the boar stalls in particular. And the poor male pigs don't get a lot of attention, and they're confined in those stalls pretty much for life until their legs give out and they collapse, and they too are put onto a slaughter truck. We know that all of the very invasive and painful husbandry procedures like chopping off their tails, cutting their teeth, hacking out huge chunks of their ears for identified purpose are still all exempted under our animal welfare laws. So they're not required to provide an anaesthetic before they do these procedures. They're not required to provide pain relief after them. Now, we all know if that was done to a companion animal, you know, your dog or your cat, you would be likely charged with animal cruelty and you would be prosecuted. Not so for 5.8 million Australian pigs. And then, of course, one of the major issues is the carbon dioxide gassing, which happens in the majority of pig slaughterhouses around the country. And I think most of us would know there's been multiple exposures of the pig gassing and the intense suffering and the slow death or the slow unconscious state of this gassing and the agonising pain and distress these pigs go through. Next, please. So this again is an image from Animal Lib going way back to 1987. And in our Pigs Without Borders campaign, we've dug out a whole lot of historical footage, which is as relevant today in 2025 as it was in the 1980s, because the campaign is basically being run because not a lot has changed. Pigs, mother pigs are still in sow stalls, not permanently because the laws have shifted a little bit, but they're still in there for a good proportion of their lives. Next, please. So why did we launch this campaign that we are incredibly excited about? And I'm sorry for that image, but that image is what happens in every intensive piggery around the country, and that is where the baby piglets who are undersized or sick and they're not going to make the standard weight for slaughter, they're not going to be profitable, are picked up by their hind legs and they are killed through blunt force trauma, which is normally their soft skulls being smashed into the concrete floor or hit against the side of a pen, and then they're left in those aisles and then they're basically thrown out like rubbish. Next, please. So our campaign is an Australia-wide national campaign. This is not just about New South Wales, and that explains our campaign title, Pigs Without Borders, because our view is that it shouldn't matter where these pigs live, whether it's Queensland or Victoria or New South Wales, they are all entitled to the same respect and protection under the law, as are all animals and all sentient beings. So our goal with the campaign is to create a better life for Australian pigs, all of them, the environment and people. And the environmental impacts with intensive pig farming and pig slaughterhouses absolutely relate to some of the things that Rebecca was talking about in terms of environmental damage. Next, please. So basically, we believe this is the year for pigs. There is a lot of really good work going on for Australian pigs through the ongoing exposures by our friends at Farm Transparency, by the wonderful campaign being run by Animals Australia. And so we determined that this was the year we needed to launch our Pigs Without Borders campaign, because very little has changed for Australian pigs, and there are millions of these beautiful, intelligent social beings that are suffering immensely. Next, please. So, what is the campaign about? Next, please. So, because we believe we need to reach a much broader audience across Australia, and because there are so many other issues, as well as the very significant animal welfare issues and the cruelty, our campaign is giving equal concentration to the animal welfare issues, but also a significant portion of this campaign is going to cover the environmental issues. And just as an understanding, that means the use of water, the enormous pollution. Pigs produce a huge amount of effluent, and that effluent goes into effluent ponds. Sometimes it's dried out. In a lot of instances, that effluent is actually sprayed around paddocks as a fertilizer, and it's full of very harmful bacteria and other mixes, and the odour is absolutely overwhelming if you live anywhere near a piggery, and huge implications. Where you have extreme weather events, you get runoff. That runoff can go into local creeks and waterways, including drinking catchments, and the soil pollution and our groundwater reserves are also impacted significantly. The people impacts that we're going to be covering are twofold. So along the lines, again, of some of Rebecca's presentation, we're going to be talking about the human health impacts of consuming particularly highly processed pork products like salami, bacon, and some of the sausages, and the evidence links to cancer. We're also going to be talking about the people impacts with living near an intensive piggery or a pig slaughterhouse, and the psychological impacts of that in not being able to step out your backyard without being overwhelmed by the odour in particular, or hearing the pigs screaming in distress. The other people impacts that we believe we need to concentrate on and will concentrate on are the psychological and emotional impacts for workers in some of these facilities. Now, we all know there are some workers that might be so desensitised, they're not understanding what they're seeing. But we've spoken to enough whistleblowers to know there are workers in intensive piggeries and pig slaughterhouses that are being severely traumatised. And in many instances, these facilities are always in rural areas, and people don't always have a choice about where they're going to work because there aren't other alternatives. So we think we need to get that on the political platform too. In America, there are a lot of studies about the psychological impacts of the workers. Here, we have very little, and we want the government to start looking into that and providing much stronger whistleblower protections for those who want to speak out without being intimidated or bullied or harassed or sacked. Next, please. So one of the things, and I'm hoping a lot of you who are listening tonight are signed up as a subscriber and you're receiving our emails. So Saturday, a week ago, we sent out our second email about our Pigs Without Borders campaign, including links to 2 new web pages. One is for our now global petition, and we've had a really strong response to that. Thank you, everybody. But we've also launched what we're calling the exposure page. And on that web page, we've included, to give people an understanding of where we're going with this campaign, that we're going to be exposing what we believe are the 4 main enablers that are allowing this industry to continue without government and public scrutiny. Next, please. So the enablers, and I'm not going to give them away, but the first one will be exposed in sort of early May. And I would encourage you all to sign the petition, make sure you're getting our emails so you can keep up to date. And obviously we'll be sharing it across all of our social media platforms. But again, with each enabler, so for example, number 1 that we'll be exposing, we will be saying, this is what they're doing and this is how they're harming animal welfare, the environment and people. And we will be doing that and rolling these exposures out in phases. And we're really excited about what's to come with this campaign, because we think it's smart campaigning, but we think and we're hoping that it will really engage everybody, people that may not necessarily, have 100% focus on the welfare, but might be really heavily invested in the environmental issues or the public health issues. We want to hit everybody, because at the end of the day, if people adopt a plant-based diet, I'm not personally that hung up on whether they do it for the animals or the environment or the people. What's critical is that we help them transition for whatever things and whatever reasons, mean the most to them. And over time, they will start thinking about the other animals issues or the people issues. Next, please. So just had to share this because we love this girl. So this is Priscilla Pig, who's been around with animal liberation for about 18 years, I think, and we've rolled her out, and Priscilla made re-engagement at the recent Alive Festival, and she is a model pig in a sow stall. And because we are trying to move away from humans necessarily speaking for pigs, we are going to use Miss Priscilla as the voice for Australian pigs. So it will be through her that we will be running this campaign. So she's very significant and she's very beautiful and she's very precious. Next, please. So a little bit just quickly about what we've done to date. Next, please. So the image on the left is from the Alive Festival back a few weeks ago now at Gosford. So that's the big plant-based festival that happens every year in New South Wales. And that's when we rolled out Priscilla, and that's when we rolled out a lot of new merchandise, public material merchandise that we've had developed for our Pigs Without Borders. So you see the very engaging pull-up banner on the left and some of the corflutes in the front of the stall about the pigs, but also about the environmental issues. And we're going to continue to publish public material. Next, please. So we've also sent out on the 1st of March, which was International Day for Pigs, our first email, and launched the first web page. And they're all on Animal Lib's website for anybody that wants to check them out. Next, please. We've produced through Kara's clever graphics work 2 Pigs Without Borders stickers that are on our shop page. that anybody can, and we would encourage people to purchase these where you can, or make it, and basically it's make a donation of any amount you can afford, and we will send the stickers out to you, because you putting these on your car or on your laptop or wherever you want to, on your front house window, on your letterbox, is absolutely creating more advocacy and getting people to think about it. Next, please. So I spoke earlier about the new subscriber email, and that's about our petition. I'm sure Cara will include the petition link when she's finished sharing my slides, so that anybody who hasn't signed and shared, that you can, please. It's really important. Next, please. So, and that's what on the left is what the exposure page looks like. And when you scroll to the bottom of that web page, it shows the 4 enablers we've identified in the campaign that we're going to be exposing, without fear or favour, I guarantee you. Next, please. So keep going, Cara. So the other critical things we've been doing as part of this campaign is compiling a really comprehensive history of what the pork industry has done, and that's the entire pork industry across Australia, and that includes everything they've promised and every failure to deliver those promises. And a good example is their voluntary phase out of sow stalls, which has never really happened. Next, please. The other thing we're working really hard on is smart tools of engagement, so that all of you and everybody else who cares about farmed animals and has a deep love for pigs, because they are so damn special, that you can take up these tools of engagement. We're going to make them as easy for you as possible to influence other people. You're going to be our arms and legs for this campaign. And that image of those pigs living like that, the mother pigs, that is from an Australian intensive piggery, and that piggery still looks like that. Next, please. As well as lodging a huge range of freedom of information requests and GIPPers, which is what it is in New South Wales. We're doing a lot of work preparing to expose these 4 enablers, and we're going to be proud and loud when we do it, because we think it's, as I said, it is the year for pigs, and it needs to happen, because nothing much has changed for Australian pigs, and it's a blight on this country that we still treat these incredibly gentle, intelligent social beings the way we do. Next, please, Cara. So just quickly, how we're fueling the work, because campaigns take enormous resources, and we will all work, our team will always work as many hours as we need to for the campaigns that we're incredibly passionate about, but we are doing some fundraising type things to try and help us, so that if we need to run public ads or we need more printing done, we've got some money to do that. That's not going to take away from all of our other work. Next, please, Cara. So we are developing new Pigs Without Borders t-shirts that I guarantee will be exceptional. Next, please. And in the meantime, we still have a few of our old pigs t-shirts. You can sign and share our petition. And it's not just signing it, it's sharing it. You can shop for pigs on Animal Lib's webpage, and we've got a variety of things you can make a donation and get something for. And you can take up all of our tools and engagement and the current one is the petition, but there's going to be lots more released for the rest of the year. Next, please, Cara. So I guess the other thing that's really important, and again links to Rebecca's presentation, is using this campaign and helping to talk to people in a fact-based, respectful manner about, trying plant-based options, and the huge variety there is also something we're going to get people to start doing, because that's going to make the difference to Australian pigs and all our other beautiful, gentle, sentient farm animals. Next, please. So finally, thank you. We have the most extraordinary supporters, and I know that all of you out there value and appreciate the work we do, but I can tell you from when we released the first email about this Pigs Without Borders campaign that we're all super excited about and really passionate about. I certainly have been overwhelmed with phone calls and messages and emails from people certainly right across Australia, but also a lot from the United Kingdom and a lot from America, just saying thank you for standing up for the pigs and what else can we do. So that is, we take that all to our hearts, and it is reassuring that our messages are getting through. So thank you very much for your attention. Again, very happy to share any of the slides, very happy to take any questions at the end, and thank you for supporting this really important campaign.
And Lisa, thank you. I said at the head of this that you are a formidable force of nature. You are truly extraordinary. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank our tiny team. When we're talking about campaign work, we're talking about Lisa, Alex, Vince, and Cara, and the volume of work that's put out by our teeny tiny team is remarkable. I honestly believe they do the work of 8, 9 people each, and it never fails to boggle me just how much is achieved by our tiny team. And Cara, thank you for all that you do behind the scenes, and to Alex for his beautiful graphics, and I wish he could be here tonight to witness some of his work. And to you, Lisa, thank you again for a tremendous presentation.